Hello, hello. So we're doing things a little different this time. Um, for those of you who have joined us previously, we did it separately. Thought it'd be fun to do it in person together. Um, Simply because I think it recreates exactly what we're trying to recreate with this webinar, which is uh, when we first met, we shared an office for 5 years, and a lot of the early ideation came from war stories, from interactions, and just late nights working through challenges for the MSP that we met at, and we're trying to recapture that magic with this.
That's right. I think the office was a little bigger than this one. I think it was like a 5x5. But we'll get started here soon and talk about magic.
And or AI, or a little bit of both. Well, should we get started?
Absolutely.
All right. Again, thanks everybody for joining. We hope to have both a compelling and valuable conversation today. If at any point you have feedback, you have a question, you'd like to double click into any of the topics that we cover while we're going through them, please do drop them in the chat. We have Paralee from our marketing team who will be responsive right away and surface them to make sure that we get to them if and as they come up. Hi, Paralee. All right. So we wanted to start with what is monthly magic. I spoke to it at the top. Again, we first met at a managed service provider in New York by the name of RFA, shared an office for 5 years. So you got your developer data focus background over here. I was more so on the ops side. PSA management and administration was one of the teams that I was responsible for while there. So,
and today we are co-founders of Thread, and we have a lot of ramblings and thoughts, and we spend a lot of time thinking about magic or our AI product and AI as a whole. So we want to make some of those conversations that we're having internally more broadly visible, tracking some changes in the industry, some new interesting news, how to process it, and really all through the lens of MSP. I think we have good representation of both back office and front office between Matt and I in terms of how an MSP runs. And so we're excited to get into it.
Let's do it.
All right. So we've been hearing a ton, and there's been a lot of news that there is AI a bubble. To date, it looks like over $1 trillion has been invested in the industry. I mean, the NVIDIA stock has just been enjoying that. I think all the cryptocurrency folks are just happy they figured out that they can repurpose their GPUs for something apart from mining Dogecoin, Dogecoin. And really what's happening, it's interesting, right? And as we've been talking about it, is like, what is a bubble? What is a hype cycle? So just to talk a little bit about how we've been thinking about it, a bubble is typically this excitement. And I think you had some good phrasing around like this overinvestment into it.
Yeah, I mean, just like any technological advancement, a big leap, what you'll see is a bunch of enthusiasm. Certainly, if it's got the promise that I believe we all believe, and we certainly do, that AI, generative AI, and some of the topics that we'll get into a little bit later on have, and the potential impact that can have on businesses globally. So what you see is people want to get there first, and I think, and in a big way, to make sure that they win. And I think it's only to be expected, and that's what we've seen to date.
Yeah, and so there's definitely been overinvestment, and if you don't listen to All In podcast, they do get a little political, but they have really good insights about AI. And there was a great example that I think is interesting here, that the .com bubble was also a bubble. It was way overinvested, also trillions of dollars into pets.com, because apparently ordering pet food was supposed to give you back ROI of billions of dollars. And obviously that didn't pan out, and AOL triggered that. But what was a really interesting observation is that these bubbles, what they leave behind is infrastructure. So part of that .com bubble, a ton of infrastructure on broadband was built throughout the United States, but even the world more broadly. And even though those companies collapsed, and of course there was a big impact on the investment companies that put in that money, using our pension funds and 401ks to make these bets, but that infrastructure persevered moving forward. And the companies that we all know and love now, even the fact that we're on Zoom, Meta, Amazon, all of those are only possible because of that original investment cycle. And similarly, the cryptocurrency was a bubble, got a lot of investment into it, but we did figure out how to make graphic cards at scale. And we also figured out that AI really likes graphic cards and the way that GPUs work versus CPUs. And so we do believe we're in a bubble. I think the case that we're seeing right now is a lot of companies are struggling to find value. What are the use cases, right? It's impressive that you can ask it to write you a poem, in the tone of Will Smith from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but you can't really make ROI from that. So the only areas we're really seeing that there's ROI from these investment is coming in the customer service industry. Klarna, which is a buy now, pay later solution, partnered up with OpenAI, and they released an incredible article last year, I believe, how they were able to automate the jobs of 700 customer service representatives by building an AI that's customer service facing. So we're really excited about that. I think there's a lot of places that people are still trying to figure it out in. And so right now the quest is that we're definitely overinvested on AI. The quest is for value, and whether they can find that value without necessarily, the bubble blowing up means people are writing off their investments, and ultimately, your stocks aren't performing as much. Your retirement accounts look a lot scarier if you're retiring in the next 10 to 15 years. So I think there's this big race there, and we're keen to see how that plays out in the next 2 to 3 years.
And I think what you'll start to see, I think the risk really is in like generalized application when you're thinking about value and that initial proof of value. We're a little biased based on our company and how we think about AI, but really what you'll start to see in our belief is verticalized AI applications and use cases and integrations that are solving a very specific problem and pain point for a very specific end customer start to come to primacy, and very quickly.
Yeah, I think a big use case is natural language processing or unstructured text, like getting a bunch of documents in and trying to extract the data out of that has been typically very difficult. And generative AI, large language models, are language oriented, and so they're able to do that well. So we're really excited to see what's going to happen there. But back to the thing that we all know and love as IT professionals, let's talk data centers. Let's talk about Ethernet cables. Microsoft and OpenAI have made a plan to launch, I think it's called Stargate, which is pretty nerdy, but really cool sounding.
Yeah, futuristic.
Is $100 billion data center. Now, there's really interesting things that, to the point of the .com bubble before, the infrastructure that's going to be laid out here is incredible, because what they're doing is they're building GPU scale like never before. They're the whole rack is able to communicate. You're talking about hundreds and hundreds of GPUs that are able to handle the workload, distribute that workload. And what's happening that's interesting there is that the prediction is that by 2050, that the AI data centers are going to use the same amount of electricity as all of the humans in the United States of America. So if it's having knock-on effect, now you're talking about, well, how do we get more energy to come out? How do we introduce more energy output so that we can continue to digitalize the world around us? And what's really interesting is that the training process is a quite expensive process. And so they're really going to do this to build GPT-5 and GPT-6, where the goal is that you're talking about advanced reasoning, advanced intelligence. And on the flip side, if you've noticed, GPT-4o, the cost per token has been falling extremely rapidly. And the reason for that is they're actually using two different workloads for training versus inferences and actual processing. So once you train it, it can actually be quite light. So petabytes of data that's being digested from the public internet, and it's compressed down to a few hundred gigabytes or terabytes. And you're now even talking about small language models that can run on your computer and on your phone. So we think that whether it's a bubble or not, there's going to be a massive, massive infrastructure of both energy and GPU that will help to move the, worst case scenario, we could just spin up a bunch of Windows virtual desktops and stream them off of all the trillions of dollars of graphic cards.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question, is do we believe the second headline there is actually answering the first question in a way, right? Like I don't believe Microsoft would and OpenAI would invest that level of capital if they didn't believe that over the medium and longer term there's a very lucrative and important future.
That's right. That's right. And for us IT folk, they need more IT people than ever to build all these data centers and to manage them. So it's good for our industry as a whole. We are keeping a close eye on to seeing like where the value comes and how we close that. On the topic of trolling a little bit, XAI released Grok 2, which is interesting. For those of you that don't know, Elon Musk was actually one of the early founders of OpenAI that is called closed AI because they're actually not open source like they promised to be. And so he left and he started XAI. And so you're seeing a massive competitor arise in the space. You obviously have your Google with Gemini, you have OpenAI and Microsoft that are twinning there. And you're seeing this third competitor come in. What's really great is how fast they're able to train and how fast they've been able to get to nearly the same level. So we're actually seeing that there's orders of magnitude better in processing given all this infrastructure. And of course, because Elon Musk is the biggest troll, has released an image processing integration that is completely uncensored. And so we've seen a lot of fun there. Please use it sparingly. I believe it is closed beta, so you have to pay for it. But it's really interesting to see now, this multimodality that's happening. Obviously, texting and chatting with a bot is great, but you're also talking about vision and audio. And so we're starting to see how multiple models are interacting with one another. And I think one of the things I always think about is, man, when I was on the service desk, if I could just have the AI look at just whatever I'm sharing, by the way, I don't love the Microsoft solution of looking at everything I'm doing.
Yep.
But if it could just see that the screen share that I'm in and can understand, give me some advice, but more importantly, just write my time entry for me. So I think that multimodality is going to be really, really interesting. And that's why I was 4.0, representing Omni, or the ability to handle many different types of data. So if you want to have some fun there, please use it responsibly.
And probably not for B2B use cases at the moment, right? A little early.
I've been trying to break my head about what can we do there, but in terms of image generation, but I think we're going to have to skip on that one as the MSP industry and continue to focus on text and of course audio, with the majority of support requests are still driven through phone calls, which is the most expensive way to deliver service. And so we're excited to see how that channel is really going to play out.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great segue to the next section, which is like, we want to make sure that this conversation is oriented and contextualized in a way that is valuable for our partners and folks in the industry. And so we just want to spend a couple seconds. You all probably know this way better than we do, but a couple seconds using the MSP business model, right, as the framing for the assistive versus agentic conversation, because we do want to make sure that we're speaking to like specifics. What are we seeing now? What do we believe we'll see in the near term to the medium term as it relates to both of those, and what it means in terms of impact to your business. So we won't spend too much time here, but I think it's important context, right? We won't go into all these points, but what is managed service at the end of the day? You're selling services, labor-based services for the most part. Obviously, we're bundling products in as well as a flat fee against your SLA. And what does that mean? It means that labor tends to be the biggest chunk of the pie, so to speak, within your service gross margin. We've seen margin compression, right? A lot of point solutions and platforms in the space that kind of expand that impact to your gross margin. And really what we're thinking about all the time is like, from a value perspective, how can we impact the equation that you see at the bottom there, which is service multiple of wages, which really fundamentally boils down to how much managed service revenue am I supporting per resource on my service team.
Yeah, but when I finally understood this after being on the service desk and SA for 5 years, I realized this is the reason why we really suck at naming ourselves in the industry. We went from VARs to MSPs, but of course, the majority of our revenue has become managed services. I do think, reselling products with AI has been really interesting. Obviously, Microsoft Copilot's pushing a lot there, and there's a lot of great opportunities. We are seeing kind of disparate usage of that, but where we believe the true opportunity for us as service company is this concept of, well, what is the customer service cost? What does it cost to actually deliver the service? And what we talk about all the time is, unlike, if you're running an e-commerce store selling toothbrushes or sneakers, where the service is kind of like the cost of doing business, where you're really making your money on sneakers. Here, the product is the service, and so it's a lot more risky in some places. Like Klarna really sells loans, and so it's probably not as risky for them. But we think that this is really the area, to your point, like where we think the AI's solutions are trying to drive value, and hopefully we'll see that over the next 2 to 5 years.
Yeah, and that is the two levers as we see it, right? Is a better experience and a more efficient experience and a like thoughtful, intentional, magical experience will drive your managed service revenue up, because you're retaining customers and hopefully they're expanding, as they grow. And then on the service employee side of the equation, if you're able to deliver said service more efficiently, then your service multiple of wages moves it very much in the right direction. And I think the question that a lot of folks have is, and we'll get to this, is AI meant to replace my people entirely? And I think, in short, the answer is no, certainly not anytime soon.
Yeah, until 500 years from now, we can all retire and it'll just be AIs talking to AIs and doing managed service for AIs.
AI as a service, I think we spoke about this, but this is just kind of underlining the point, right? Biggest piece of the pie there is labor, right? And so to the extent that you can mitigate the impact of time on a specific account or subset of accounts, that means they have room to deliver more and better service, and more profitable service.
Absolutely. Let's jump into what I've been itching to talk about: assistive versus agentic AI. So we're in an evolution right now of generative AI. If we go to the next slide, it's been an interesting journey in terms of where it started. It's kind of like that meme, where we thought we'd be, where we are, was very much, hey, I'm looking, help me write an email that sounds professional about this, or like, how do I better explain this problem? And really what it was a tool that was built for humans. It was supposed to assist the human, and Matt found an awesome image of a cyborg on the left-hand side. What show was that from?
I think it was like a DC comic. Yeah.
There you go. And so we're seeing a lot of applications there. We'll talk more about that. It's everywhere from Grammarly to every single product. Microsoft's Copilot, it's in Word, it's in Outlook. It's really trying to assist the human in performing a certain task. But the responsibility still falls on the human to figure out, okay, well, what's the next thing that I have to do, right? So I got an email complaining that the file share is running slowly. Great. Probably have to log into the server and take a look at it. And if I need to figure out how to restart the file service, I could ask the generative AI to assist me in writing a PowerShell script. And that's really what we've been seeing as the major use cases. Now, agentic is going to be a long journey. And it's really changing the nature of how the AI is working to actually have planning and reasoning. So you could actually give it, let's say, that same email about the file share, and it will know the first step it has to do is to list out what are the potential things that could be wrong. And then based on those things, okay, well, what can I actually go ahead and try to do? Like maybe I already have access to PowerShell. God forbid they have the ability to change our servers without our permission.
Yeah.
But the real difference, and you're going to see this, it's a journey. The agentic thing is a journey. You're going to hear about it a lot. OpenAI is working heavily on this. If you're looking at tools or anything like that, there's some great open source tools. LangChain is one that we use internally for our AI. Take a look at that. It's if you want to geek out a bit, but really it's to help provide more of a coordinator job, and to the point where there's even different roles. Like one of those AI's objective could be to provide the best responses and to gather all the information. However, a different agent that you can build would be focused on being the best Cisco engineer. And when the issue is a Cisco, a networking issue, then you can pass it on to the Cisco agent, essentially. And the objective of the Cisco agent is to become a CCIE, as I once wish I could have been. But it's to really to put itself in the frame of, I need to solve any Cisco issues, and I know everything about Cisco. Let me work on that.
I think on the next slide, we double click into it a little bit more. But I think it's worth noting with the little emojis there. We picked Cyborg very intentionally, right? Because as you were alluding to, really it's the assistive capability is to make things faster, more seamless, help you with some context that you might need before you even think that you might need it, and thereby streamlining human involved tasks, right? It gives you, your team, your managers, extra capacity with specific tasks, but then also going forward, more like macro department level tasks as well.
Yeah, and where we're seeing this work for those of you that are looking, what do I come out with this moving forward, is on the assistive side. There was a great example we had from one of our partners where they're getting a lot of emails being forwarded from their customers asking whether the email is a phishing email or not. And oftentimes you could use an assistive AI to extract that information from an email, right? To say, oh, this doesn't look like a legit domain, because it knows what legit domains look like, or the domain doesn't match the name. And there's tools that now are purpose built for that. Another case is like, what's the priority or what's the category? Like that's really just taking text and extracting that information out from phone or email. And that's been really great. We're seeing a lot of partners get value from that. There's many solutions that do that. I'm less about pushing thread. Obviously, we do some of that, but there's a lot of tools that are built for MSPs that can help with some of that processing. Now, what we view when we view agents, and God, if I had a nickel for every time somebody asked me about auto dispatch, maybe I'd be able to build $100 billion data center like Microsoft. Has been this concept of auto dispatch. One of the things that we notice from a MSP that starts early, you're happy, you've been fixing your friends' computers for a while. Now you've decided to charge for it, and you're going to go all in. And up to about 8 techs, maybe 10 techs, you're running a really lean team, and you have great relationships with your customers because it's a small team and small amount of customers. And then as you drive the next inflection points, where you're starting to get to 50 customers, 75 customers, and you're starting to build multiple teams. Now you're thinking, okay, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Do I go the pod model? Do I build a quick fix team? How do I handle account management versus managed services, professional services? You build complexity in your organization of teams. And the first thing that we see is that it's the rise of the coordinator, would be the enemy of the terminator. In the sense that you build these new jobs that are just pure overhead on top of your business, because you need that in order to manage the collaboration and the logistics of inside of that company. How many coordinators did we end up having at peak?
I think 5 or 6. Yeah.
Yeah, it was insane. And these are non-billable resources. So,
And really, the goal there is to, as we well know, right? There's a lot of variation in the environments that we service and how requests are coming in, who's responding to them, when they're handed off, so on and so forth. And what that creates and causes is fragmentation, or it often can, right? Unless you've got a super tight operation. That fragmentation results in a poorer experience oftentimes because the right person isn't getting the right information at the right time. We're not setting the right expectations with the customer. And ultimately that's why they end up churning, right? Is misaligned expectations and poor communication. And that's what that layer is designed to account for. It's essentially making sure that we continue to deliver a high level of customer experience across all that complexity.
That's right. And no harm on coordinators. We just don't think that even they're enjoying their job of chasing people to please respond to this ticket, or please put in your time entry, and really just playing this role of chasing tickets to death. And so what we think about there is, I think there's this aspect of planning. And again, how do you make use of this? Where do we see this happening? Is that we believe as we get better with agentic reasoning, you can actually do things like figure out who's the next best person to take this. If I can figure out from the assistive side the type of issue, it's Cisco, and I know that this person has familiarity with the account and that technology, then that cost for us is so much lower than having the wrong person that with the wrong skill set without the context work on this issue. And that becomes a lot more expensive, right? If you're spending an hour to resolve something that can be done in 15 minutes, that adds up, and you make those decisions, in the course of the day. So we believe agents are going to be really great for planning. They can reason and they can come up with the plan of action. You can actually test this. A lot of agents are just built on top of OpenAI, even in Copilot. So when you're writing these prompts, try to say, can you give me a plan of how you would address this? And then take that plan and say, okay, now tell me what are the next steps that I would have to do for each steps of this plan. Can you make sure that you're also considering other things? And it's actually helping you with the planning. Of course, the agentic solutions like Klarna was able to implement, and solutions that we're going to start seeing a lot more on the customer service side, we'll automate a lot of that for you and build really good user interfaces on agents. But that's where we believe that the first use cases that will start to come to life for MSPs is going to be things like auto triage, like dispatch, also account management, quarterly business reviews. Like, you have to go to your break gauge, you have to get your CSAT scores, you have to go get your cybersecurity report, you have to get all of the purchasing and your spend with, on IT. And so I think agents are going to be able to do a lot of that and say, oh, a QBR needs this, right? And you can kind of give it that guidance. Let me go and collect that data and put together a PowerPoint for them.
And I think that's a layer that's worth double clicking into, is that we're early days, right? Like pretty much across the board on this side of things. Is it the persistent context and understanding of what a specific ask means, and then the downstream requirements associated with that ask? Is that what people are working to figure out right now, how to do that in a big way?
Yeah, so that's a great question. There is a concept of persistence, but even assistive AI has some of that chat thread, right? It knows if you did it in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and then you're like, hey, also write this like a pirate. It'll know and kind of have that persistence. But what's happening with agents is that it has a planning mode, and instead of thinking about it like there's one AI that you're talking to, think about it as if you have a team of AIs that are specialized. And so now you have one that's the account managing agent who's like, okay, I need to make a QBR And every day it goes through and says, okay, who's due for a QBR, right? Or like who's coming up this week. And then it'll say, well, okay, let's use this agent that's really good at pulling data from PDFs. And so it's going to go into the file server SharePoint and grab all that data. And then it's going to have another agent that's focused on really good at creating Excel tables of that data and putting it together. And then another agent that's supposed to be a concise writer. So it's more, you're talking to a team. Similarly to the reason why we get hired as MSPs is because you can hire one good service tech that can serve your computers, but you still don't have that CCIE, you still don't have server administrators, you don't have all of those other people. And so agents are creating responsibilities, and it's really a persistent thread, but with many agents that are talking to themselves in order to resolve your issue, versus you talking to that one AI to try to get it to solve something. I'm obviously very passionate about this. So
and it's the level of specialization that improves not only, I think, the output, but also speed, right? It doesn't have to
the
figure
quality.
Exactly.
And again, you could use this today. If you go into OpenAI, the first thing you say is, you are now a CCIE expert. You know everything about Cisco. And just by giving it that frame, for the rest of the conversation, it's going to act like a Cisco agent for you. And the quality of the answers is going to dramatically improve. Now imagine you have these loaded up for every problem that you have, and then you have a virtual coordinator on top that's having these conversations and getting that work done for you.
And making sure it's delivered in SLA.
In SLA time.
Yeah. No, I guess, like, obviously it gets the wheels turning, right? Certainly does mine. What does that mean in terms of designing a service experience or a service in the future? Are you going to need like an architect to map all of that out, or will it be more productized?
I think it's going to be, there's going to be, probably the first solutions are going to be very generic. As you know, we are the IT providers that get all the IT tools last for whatever reason. So I think there's going to be very generic tools that early on you'll be able to use, and you will have to design a lot of that experience. I think over time you're going to see pre-built agents. A great example of this is Devin. It's it was a famous he was a famous kid that I believe won Jeopardy at like 9 or 10, and now he's in AI. They built a collection of agents for computer programming. And so it actually has access to a code editor, and it has access to a server and to Google things. And so that's one example where you're seeing a prepackaged set of agents to deliver a service. I think what's going to be really important through this journey is the way you're delivering the service for your teams today. It's important to have things like, what is your skills matrix of your staff? Do you have these competencies? What competencies do you need more of? And where do you want to invest into, right? Microsoft 365 is obviously ubiquitous, and that's a big part of it. But so I think it's going to be matching a lot of the way that we build teams today. And day one, very generic tools that we'll have to make work. But over time, I think we'll start seeing, IT service desk out of the box type of solutions.
So you want to talk about instant capacity? There you go, and burstable capacity. Certainly with the $100 billion data center.
Yeah, and I think on the human intervention side, there's going to be a lot of important controls that we put in place there. I think our point here is that it doesn't require a human to start the process, to make sure people aren't worried. It's not about like going in and, the virus knows how to go into PowerShell and change Microsoft 365 tenant settings. That I think there's going to be a lot of great controls around. One model that I really love is by Rasa, and we can share afterwards. It's called the Calm model, and it's how do you use generative AI, which has a level of entropy and creativity, while still maintaining full control over the experience. And that becomes really important for customer service use cases like our own. So I think that's going to be an important aspect. I think there's going to be this is going to drive a lot of automation, I think, in change management and approvals as a whole. Like right now, a lot of us don't have a really good place where we were like, okay, these are the purchasing approvers, these are the security approvers, these are the office approvers, and we didn't need to. We might be using IT Glue or Hoodoo or OneNote, and we're just posting, for this customer in free form, here's those people. But I think this will naturally continue to automate, I think, change management so that the AI has those controls, but also knows who to ask for help and approval when the time is right.
Yeah, I think the QBR point that you made earlier is an interesting one, because as I'm sure you all can relate to, certainly before there was a thread, if you were dispatched on site, not only would you have to fix the issue that you were dispatched there for, you would also get a bunch of door knockers saying like, hey, this happened a week or two ago. I didn't put in a ticket. I didn't email. I didn't call. While you're here, can you address this for me? And I think having a footprint where they are now mitigates that to an extent. But you could have, in theory, an agent that's like your proactive support agent and saying like, it's been this amount of time since we've heard from you. Is there anything that we can help with? Or, we noticed this warranty expired. With your approval, we'll go ahead and renew it with, whichever vendor it might be or distributor it might be.
Yeah, that's a great point. Even taking a look at, your CPU utilization has been high for quite some time. Is there anything you need help with? Do you need a new computer?
Super interesting.
Do we want to go to the next?
Let's do it. And would love to hear from anybody who's listening in, if this is something that's on their radar, if they're testing agents, if they're thinking about this, or it's just kind of so nebulous off in the future that it's not on the radar yet. We're still trying to figure out the assistive side and like ROI of the assistive side today before we get deeper on stuff that's more on the cutting edge. And yeah, this is more of a look at how those different categories will and can impact your P&L, your service gross margin. Is that we're adding that capacity by today on the assistive side, automating like subsets of actions on a request, improving the baseline of information that's categorized or prioritized against a request when it comes in before it even gets to the team. So that's like, I would say, micro savings with every request, right?
That's right.
That increase in value based on the number of features and automations that you're able to run on a specific request. Whereas on the agentic side, it has the potential to, certainly with information gathering, with capturing the information that you need and making sure that it gets to the right individual in the short term, and then down the way, helping to facilitate the work, has the potential to have even more impact.
Yeah, and it's, one thing we've thought about heavily was like, how do you calculate ROI on automating prioritization or categorization, or changing the summary of a ticket after the customer put God knows what into it? It's hard because it's micro, right? These are 30-second, minute tasks that ultimately add up, especially if you're running a service that's got scale, doing 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 service requests a month. And it is helpful because, for example, QBRs are massively improved because the infamous must change category when you're presenting the breakdown of tickets to a customer finally is gone. Where we see agentic we think that the ROI is going to be a lot more clear in the long term here, because it's able to offload a whole set of tasks or a whole set portion of something that needs to be done, like troubleshooting, like reading through event logs if you're connected to an RMM, and it's able to take a whole set of tasks, a collection of them, and run through them and combine all that together. And so that's why we've looked at it as supplementary, where it's, yes, the technician's quality is going to be improved significantly with assistive AI. The agentic side, we believe that it's going to be not only a quality improvement, it's going to be like you have another virtual tech that's working with you, or a virtual coordinator. And so we think that the impact is going to be massive to the ROI, and it's going to be a lot easier to prove when you see that, things that service requests where a magic agent was involved, or a virtual agent, excuse me, was involved, has significantly less time entries from humans, and faster response times ultimately for the customer, we hope. We do think agents will likely start on the tech internal side, to a certain degree in terms of like the maturity, because it's a lot less risk. But we believe that the big
Opportunity.
the area everyone wants to go towards, is customer facing. And of course, we recognize that adoption cycle will take more time in our industry than the shoe e-commerce industry, given the complexities with the service that we provide. And we don't want people to feel like they're paying us $150, $200 for all you can eat service desk so they get glorified ChatGPT access. That would be a failure, I think, if that's what ultimately ends up happening. And I believe that agents are really the only way you can provide an elevated experience. The last part I'll say on this ramble is the fact that, what's going to be unique is going to be about the data that you can put into the agent. The things that make you special, like what do you care about? What is your policy for the communication that you hold, and the quality of that communication?
Who are your customers? Like if you specialize in a specific vertical, obviously that context is king, knowing their applications and like using hedge funds as an example, their order management system, the reconciliation systems, everything that they need to do their specific work, I think is a good example. And
it's just like, if you call someone and they already know your birthday and they ask you how your kids are, like that feels very special and touching to the customer. They get relaxed, and that enables us to deliver this magical service to them. And so our guidance here, and the more we talk about it, is it's about the data that you collect, and how you're able to organize that data, having this like what's the apps that they use, why, when was that company found, when is the birthday of the CEO, what are these little things that can really elevate that experience, that will make your agent experience so much more powerful, and really help to move your business to that virtual agent level, as the agent platforms become more powerful.
Yeah, I think it's worth underlining too, right? The capacity element in terms of, one of the biggest challenges that we always had historically was understanding, as we were adding customers and adding demand, how much demand that is, and how much we needed to staff the 24/7 service desk to make sure, and coordinators to make sure that we hit our SLAs and delivered a great experience. And so what technology like this gives you the ability to do is, it's much less of a thought. You spin up instant capacity.
Yeah. Well, let's see how much of that $100 billion data center they charge back to us through their AI costs per token. So far, we've been moving in the right direction. We have seen that agent cost is significantly higher than assistive, because one question to the agent could result in the agents collaborating for 2 minutes and spending a lot. So I think that's going to be an interesting part. To your point, it's instantly available, and it's going to be interesting to see how that cost really trickles down. Yeah,
how to make it instantly effective.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, I believe we're at time for today's session. Again, we'll follow up with the recording and the articles mentioned at the top as relates to Microsoft, and a few other interesting tidbits that we covered today. Hope you guys found the conversation to be valuable. We certainly enjoyed nerding out about it, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, feel free to shoot us an email either at magic@getthread if you have questions, mark@getthread, or matt@getthread. Everything with M. Monthly Magic with Mark and Matt.
All right, signing off. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.